So what should we be doing to deal with the threat from Russia? Because interestingly, later on today, we've seen some advanced words. The Air Chief Marshal, Sir Richard Knighton, he's Chief of the Defence Staff, the most senior military officer in this country. He's going to use a speech this evening to urge the British public to make defence and resilience a higher priority. He says that the whole of the UK, not just its armed forces, need to step up to deter the threat posed by Russia of a wider war in Europe. This follows calls from the senior naval chief a week or two ago, and also the MI6 chief, Blaise Metreweli, basically saying that the front line is everywhere and that Britain is already on the front line against Russia and should be ready for Putin's export of chaos. So how worried should we be? Well, let's talk to Hamish to Bretton Gordon, OBE, a former British Army colonel. Good morning to you, Hamish.
Hi, good morning, Julia.
Thank you for joining us. I mean, it seems to me military leader after military leader, they're not waiting until they retire to speak out. They are saying it while they're in the job. We are in basically, we are effectively waiting for a hot war to break out, and we need to prepare to prevent that from happening. Do you agree with them?
Well, I do, absolutely. And I'm delighted that people like CDS are now talking exactly as you say before it's too late and they can have an impact. And as you said, the head of MI6 have warned that Russia poses an acute threat to us. She talks about the cyber attacks and the drone attacks. The JLR, Jaguar Land Rover cyber attack cost the government $1.5 billion to bail out, which is money that can now not be spent on defence. So
no, Jaguar should have perhaps had their own insurance, their own proper cyber protection, which they didn't have, I understand.
Well, I'm no great expert on cyber, but whatever they did or didn't have, it's cost us all a hell of a lot of money. But I think the point is that, undoubtedly it had Russian DNA all over it.
Yeah.
We've seen the Russian spy ships checking out our undersea cables and pipelines, no doubt, again, to have an impact on us. And we've seen drones stopping flying around. So I think it's a realization, and everything that's happening in Russia and Ukraine at the moment. And I personally don't believe that Putin has any interest in peace. He's not going to blink, but he's pretty certain that we will blink.
Yeah. And he's probably right.
He is, but the key thing that we can do is to show what we have, what CDS is calling national resilience.
When you say CDS, you mean Chief of the Defence Staff?
Yes, sorry.
Most of us don't know that.
National resilience, which we just can't rely on the military for, because we've been holed out so much.
Well, what do we mean by this? Because we're spending way less than 3% of our GDP on national defence, and we're going to make it up 3.5% in about 5 years' time. Well, we're not. It's going to be playing around with numbers, and it needs to be way more than that, and it needs to be tomorrow or even yesterday rather than in a few years' time. Everyone who's got any clue what's going on is saying that, but our politicians aren't doing that. What on earth can the British public be doing to further our resilience other than pressurising our government to spend a heck of a lot more money and put more resources and focus on our national defences? What else are we supposed to be doing?
Well, I think there's a lot we can do, and they do talk about what's called a strategic reserve. There are about 1 million veterans like myself still in the country who could certainly be used and are very keen to get involved as well. And I think, any citizen of this country who doesn't want to get involved and doesn't want to help out to provide national resilience should probably consider whether they should be here at all. But I think there are a lot of things.
But there'll be lots of Brits whose families have been in this country for many, many centuries who will say, I've heard this from callers. I don't want to fight for this country. I don't believe in this country.
Well, then presumably they're quite happy that this country is run by somebody else. And I think the vast majority of us don't. And the realization from MI6 and from the military is that we are under severe threat from the Russians. And nobody thinks they're going to stop if they prevail in Ukraine. But the way to stop them is to show that we have a strong conventional deterrent so that Putin does blink and doesn't just think that we're weak and capitulate, which, unfortunately, as you suggest, some people in this country might prefer that.
But how much can we control this? Look, we don't have conscription. We've seen some civil conscription in France. We know in Finland, or actually lots of other countries around Europe are now moving to this way. Do we need to actually, actually have a national service of some kind? We need to get our young people trained up, ready, so if and when they are called to arms, because a lot of people just say we're both warmongers.
Well, yeah, I quite agree. I think we need to have plans for it. We don't need it now. The Strategic Reserve, the veterans, they're all keen to get involved. Absolutely. We have to look at our European, people like the Finns and the Swedes, where everybody is trained and they can put a lot of people on the ground, but they're a lot closer to the threat than we are. I think we just need plans, because if it all does go badly, and the worst case scenario that we do get involved in a conflict in Europe, then I'm afraid we'll all be involved. So we need plans rather than just trying to ignore it, that we have done since the end of the Cold War.
And we have been ignoring it. Our politicians have been ignoring it. But one of the reasons they've done that is because it's quite convenient not to have to spend a huge chunk of our national income on defence and spending it on, nurses or free this, free that, a bit more welfare, everybody. That's what people prefer, isn't it?
Well, one can see, and certainly I'm sure the present government would say that's what they were voted in on. But unfortunately, the situation is rapidly changing. And if we spend all the money, all the government money on welfare and other things, then we will not have a defence to be able to carry on in the way that people would like to live in this country.
I'm wondering if we could solve a lot of this with, hey, no more welfare for anyone under the age of 30. You're joining the military. That might focus minds in lots of different ways, eh? Hamish, Bretton, Gordon, I'd love to talk to you for longer. You can hear the music heading up to the top of the hour. Former British Army Colonel. He certainly supports what the Chief of the Defence Staff is saying. Love to hear you.